Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Alaikum assalam, rahmatullah. Can you hear me,
How are you
brother?
doing? Yeah, Naam, I can hear you quite well. Can you
I
hear
think your
me?
voice is lagging. I can't
Okay,
hear you well.
let
I think your voice is lagging.
me just try something.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Huh?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear your voice broken up. It's lagging a lot.
Hello? Naam, Sheikh. Now?
Hello, salam.
Salam, can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear you.
I think there's a delay on the application on its own because I spoke to the host.
Connection. If you want to type up questions, if you can't, if the internet won't let you speak, if the audio won't work, if you want to type them up, I can read them and then answer
sure,
them.
we could do that too.
Yeah, let's try that, because even though I'd love to have a conversation with you right now and it would make my life a lot easier, but it's not working, it keeps lagging. Unless you can go on 4G or something.
Yeah, apparently in Tanzania, like the 4G is nothing different. So I think I'll just put them on chat for you.
Yeah, just put a question in the chat and then I will do my best to answer it, inshallah. Let's do that.
Sure thing. Okay, I'd just like you to begin. Maybe you could give a brief about yourself, and you could give a brief about Meraj and what happened on the night. And following up on that, I'd give you some questions, and then we could go on.
Okay. I couldn't catch all of that, but I think you want me to just like start with a little intro, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل وجل اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم واكرمنا بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are right now living in one of the most blessed, living through one of the most blessed occasions in the Islamic calendar. It's actually the agreed upon day of Mab'ath today. Well, yesterday. And the 27th of Rajab is agreed upon to be the day of the Ba'athah, the day that the Prophet becomes officially endowed with the message of Islam and the mission officially begins from the heavens. Now we can go through explaining all of that. At the same time, Afwan. Now we can go through explaining all of that. At the same time, we want to also talk about the Mi'raj. The Mi'raj, the Isra wa Mi'raj, is a very mystical story in the Prophet's life. It's the greatest journey that he embarked upon. And we want to also discuss this because on the 27th of Rajab, there are opinions that the Mi'raj journey occurred. There are differences of opinions, of course. There's an opinion that happened in Rabi' al-Awwal, in Rajab, Shahr Ramadan, on different days in Shahr Ramadan. And of course, even there's disagreement upon the year that it happened. So we can talk about the dates as the questions are asked. But initially, the story of the Mi'raj is one where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is taken on a winged horse. And he's taken from Mecca, so he's in Mecca. He's taken from Mecca to modern day Palestine, Baytul Maqdis. He is taken there. This is called the Isra journey. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده من مسجد الحرام إلى مسجد الأقصى. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا مسجد الحرام إلى مسجد الأقصى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the night time, he says in this ayah, he takes his servant on the Buraq, on an Isra. The Buraq is the winged horse creature. That's the name that it's given. He takes the Prophet on a physical journey from Mecca to Palestine.
Modern day Palestine.
And there, he goes on the journey of Mi'raj from there. The Mi'raj journey is one that did not take place on earth. On earth was only the Isra. Isra, the word Isra means Isra is that the Rasulullah was carried at the night time on a journey. So the Isra happened, Sayr Laylan, in the night time. Once he is in now modern day Palestine, in Masjid al-Aqsa, he goes on the Mi'raj. He ascends to the heavens. Now I'm sure there are going to be many questions about this ascension. And this is what people really want to find out about and how did this happen. Now what needs to be understood is that this is an agreed upon unanimous belief in Islam. There is no disagreement of opinion when it comes to the Isra and Mi'raj. This occurred in the life of the Prophet. It was one of the greatest miracles. It's a very mystical journey and experience. And what I will be trying to do today, inshallah, is my best to explain the answers to whatever questions you may have, whether they are about the 27th of Rajab as a whole, right? Because Rajab, as I mentioned, it's the Ba'ath. So it can be about 27th of Rajab as a whole, or the Isra Mi'raj. What is the Isra? What is the Mi'raj? The date, how did it happen? The hadith, why did it happen? And inshallah, there are many questions that the brother has prepared. And of course, anyone online who would like to ask from the audience, I'm at your service. So I'm going to be reading them, I think. I'll be reading the questions and then I'll be answering. So
So Sheikh, can you hear me at the moment?
Yes, it's better. It's lagging, but I can make out what you're saying.
Okay, so to begin with, as you said, it was a physical ascension. Why was it that Allah at this point in time chose to make it physical? Was it not applicable to show the Prophet all the signs or give him his Nabuwah through a dream? Was a dream not applicable at this moment?
So this is the question. Let me read the question now for everyone to be aware of what was asked. Why did Allah make this journey physical? Was it not applicable for the journey or the signs to be shown through a dream? This is a very good question. Why couldn't this just be a dream? Why did it have to be a physical journey? There's a reason for this, of course. First of all, dreams come in different states. Sometimes with a dream, you eat too much chicken at night before you sleep and then you have nightmares. That's the kind of dream that the prophets had. There are other dreams, the dreams of the saints and the prophets, that are messages, that becomes like wahi, becomes amr, it becomes a demand from Allah. Ibn Sina, the philosopher of Avicenna, he says that a liar cannot have truthful dreams. This is a very deep point. Someone who is a liar, who lies a lot, cannot dream truthfully. He cannot have truthful dreams because he himself, his nafs, has become a lie. So his dreams, how can they be trusted? So he cannot have a true dream. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi is known as Al-Sadiq Al-Amin. He is truthful, of course. The Prophet, when he has a dream, this is seen as a sign. Nabi Ibrahim, we know, when he had a dream about his son being slaughtered, he told his son, I saw you in my dream and it was to slaughter you. And Ismail told him, do as you are ordered to do. Look how the dream was an order, not just a sign, it was revelation. They received revelation in their dreams. Saying that, the question is posed, why couldn't the Isra and Mi'raj just be a dream? Because there was a necessary point to the Isra and Mi'raj. There are several reasons why it occurred. This answers what I'm about to answer right now. This answers several questions. It answers the question being asked right now, and it also answers why did this journey have to take place. So there was a man, a companion of Imam Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam. He asked Imam Musa al-Qadim, why did the Mi'raj have to occur? What was the reason behind it? And the Imam replies that the Mi'raj occurred because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to honor the people of the heavens, the prophets and the angels, by allowing them to meet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's one answer. That the Prophet is supposed to meet them in person. Allah wants him to meet them in person. That's the first thing. For honor for them. That's the first one. Secondly, that there has to be a reason for it to be physical, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to see that these events occur like everything else occurs in life, through causes and effects. So the fact that a winged horse comes and takes him to modern day Palestine, this could have been done like this. Allah could say kun fayakun and Rasulullah would appear in modern day Palestine, but he says that there's going to be asbab, there's going to be causes and effects, and through that the Prophet is raised to the heavens. Now in this raising to the heavens, there's a difference between Rasulullah knowing everything in his heart, the Iman, the Rasulullah, he knew the veils were lifted for him, he could see the unseen, but there's a difference between knowing it 100% certain of it and experiencing it. There's a difference between knowing something and experiencing something. So I answered in terms of the honor for the people of the heavens. Now, there is an honor for, not an honor, there is a reason for the Prophet Muhammad to go through this journey. He knew of the angel of death, but he had not met the angel of death. He knew about Isa and Musa and Ibrahim, but he did not meet Isa, Musa and Ibrahim. There's a different experience when you meet someone. Right now, I can read a lot about Imam Khomeini. I can read about him, read all his books, watch all his videos, and basically I have a complete biography of him in my mind. But what happens when I meet him? It's not the same experience. Now I enter his presence. I might gain something else from his presence. We say that another ila wajh al-alim ibadah. Look into the face of a alim is worship. So we see there is an effect of being in the presence of someone different than if you're far away from them. Here I'm not saying that Rasulullah is doing ibadah by looking at the faces of the prophets, although they are all ulama, and so they are all performing ibadah by looking at each other's faces. Here, there is something called haqqul yaqeen. There is something called ilmul yaqeen and haqqul yaqeen. Ilmul yaqeen is the knowledge of certainty, when you know 100% of something to be true. Haqqul yaqeen is now an experience. You've experienced it for yourself. To know Allah is one and experience Allah is one are two different things. So this was the pinnacle of Rasulullah's journey. This was the highest any human being has ever gone. It was the furthest any being, not human, any being, that's it, mutlaq being, any being absolutely has ever reached. As we say, when the Prophet reached a stage in the Mi'raj, Sidrat al-Muntaha. the place of the, there are many different translations for this,
Okay.
but afwan, hello?
No, go on, Sheikh.
Oh, okay. So the Sidrat al-Muntaha is the place the Prophet reached on the Mi'raj. Now there's a difference between the Isra and the Mi'raj. I want to get that clear. And we'll explain both of them if you would like that, if that's what the questions are going to be about. But to answer why this journey had to be physical and not a dream is because of this. A dream remains ilmul yaqeen. Now you can answer it yourself. A dream remains knowledge of it. I mean knowledge in the dream, and there was a demand or an order that I follow or a sign. A dream is that, but to experience it in my life, it's a whole different story. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't only honor the prophets, He blessed Rasulullah with the greatest honor and blessing to enter into His presence in Sidrat al-Muntaha. And Sidrat al-Muntaha is basically a place where no one has reached. It's the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Rasulullah reached that place and he had a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this place. And we will inshallah go into more detail as the session goes on.
Also, Sheikh, following up to the next question. So previously while answering, you mentioned that Allah wanted to meet the Prophet physically. So by any chance, did the Prophet get to see Allah?
Okay, so it's not that Allah wanted to meet the Prophet physically. Allah wanted Rasulullah to experience his own presence of the other prophets. This wasn't physical though. The Mi'raj was not physical. So we can speak about that, what I mean by physical. It was their presence, but it was not a physical presence. They were in a metaphysical state. So the Prophet goes and meets the prophets in their presence face to face. And there's a difference between face to face and physical. There is a different type of body, which is a metaphysical body that one can take to the Mi'raj, which is what the Prophet was given. Rasulullah traveled physically from Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa, physically, with his body. He left Mecca, he left the town, he flew. In one night, he went and came back on a winged horse. This is a physical journey. The metaphysical journey happens when he is inside when he's in Palestine. When he is raised on a mystical journey to the heavens, it's not his body that's raised. His body remains on earth. His soul, his state, his truth, his haqiqah, that's what is raised. And there's a reason for this. Because a body cannot go to that world. A physical body cannot be accepted into that world. It's a world with different laws. You know how in this world we have length, height, width, we have dimensions to ourselves, 3D, 2D, everything else. These are laws. We can't escape these laws. You can't escape laws of physics or gravity or whatever else it is. The next world, the barzakh and the world after that, have different laws. They have different width and height and depth and whatever it is. They have a body for that world. There's a body for that world. The body that's for that world is given to us when we die. Right now, when you die, you leave this body, but you live again, right? When you live, who lives? How do you live? How do you go to the barzakh? And how do you go to the afterlife? With what body? Which body do you go? Not with this one. You have to have a body though. Don't think that you're like a ghost, like in Scooby-Doo, that comes out of the body and flies. That's not how it is. We have a body. This is something that the philosopher Mullah Sadra geniusly brought forth to explain the barzakh. That the barzakh is something where you are given another body, but it's not a physical body. You see, you understand bodies as physical. This is not the next world is not a physical body, but it's a body. It's a body suited for that world, a metaphysical body. So this metaphysical body, Rasulullah travels to Mi'raj. On the Mi'raj, he enters the presence in a different kind of body than the one that we are in right now. In one suited for that world. Then he is taken through to meet different prophets until he reaches Sidrat al-Muntaha. Here is the final place And here is where he enters into the presence of Allah. It's a whole build-up to get to there. I can talk about that too if you want. There's a whole build-up to get to Sidrat al-Muntaha. Once he's there, he's in the presence of Allah. But he cannot see Allah physically. Even in that world, there is no physical being, okay? Because it's a different world. There are different bodies though. Okay, the question, can he see the body of Allah of that world? No, Allah never has a body in any world. He has no body whatsoever. There are no bodies for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is only the absoluteness, Allah in everything, because He is infinite. And every single thing around us is simply a manifestation and created by Him. And it's not independent of Him. So, for the Prophet to see Allah with his eyes, we would be talking about this world, with these eyes of this world. The next world have different eyes. We can never see Allah with these eyes. However, there's a different type of eye that the Imam Ali speaks about, that I'm sure the Prophet used as well to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in the way that you might think, not in the physical way, but when a man, Ta'lab, asks Imam Ali, can you see Allah? Imam Ali replied, Ya Ta'lab, would I worship one who I see not? How would I worship someone I don't see? I see him, but not with these eyes. I see him with the vision of hearts. The eyes of my heart see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, this is ilmul yaqeen. But when the Prophet Muhammad went into Sidrat al-Muntaha, this is haqqul yaqeen. This is the furthest and closest anyone's ever been to Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes what happened in Sidrat al-Muntaha. And He says that the Prophet went through a stage where it was like he was melting from how close he was. It was like he was 2 bows lengths or even less than that. Dana fatadalla fakana qaba qawsayni aw adna. He was so close, so close. It was the closest anyone's ever been. No one's ever been that close, and no one will ever be that close ever again. Prophet Muhammad reached that, but still, he could not reach the essence of Allah. No one can. No one can ever penetrate Allah's essence, the truth of what He is. The truth of His essence cannot be touched. The most we can acquire are His names. And the prophets know the most of those names. Know all of those names, really. They know all the names, but they cannot ever, no creature can ever understand or fathom the essence. That's only Allah and nothing else. But aside from this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Rasulullah the honor of coming into His presence in Sidrat al-Muntaha, and He had a conversation with Him one-on-one, where He heard His voice, and He spoke to him, and He gave him a message. And Rasulullah took this with him and kept it with him his whole life. And so he saw paradise. He saw the pond of Kawthar. He saw the different rivers. He saw the prophets. He saw the angel of death and spoke to him. He saw the hellfire. He heard the stones falling into hell. He saw everything when he was there. There is a narration from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam where he gives the details of everything that happened, very long narration. In fact, we have so many narrations about the Mi'raj. It's a very deep mystical journey, and it's one of my favorite things to read about. So I would definitely recommend everyone here to look into more about what this Isra and Mi'raj may mean, because it's a beautiful miracle.
Is there a specific book, Sheikh, that you would suggest one who's willing to learn about Mi'raj to refer to?
I think you're asking for a book about the Mi'raj.
Yeah, any of your favorites.
Okay, sorry, because the audio is off. What I would recommend is there is a beautiful narration in the book by Sayyid Hussain Nasr. It's a very small book. It's called Muhammad, Messenger of God. It's a very small book. It's only about 70, 80 pages, and there's a nice chapter there on the Mi'raj if someone would like to listen to or read into it. And of course, on alislam.org, there's so much that you could read about when you just type in Mi'raj and Isra, and many different ulama have cited the different ahadith for that and all the details about what happened, and they broke the hadith down. So I just saw now there's another question here. In one of Mehdi Hassan's videos, he was asked about the Prophet's Mi'raj. Yes, on that video with Richard Dawkins. He had no answer, except he said that this was one of his beliefs. In today's world, how do we explain Maraj logically? A flying horse is a fantasy logically. Okay. So, first of all, the person that Mehdi Hassan was speaking with was Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is a biologist, and he doesn't believe in God. He's an atheist. He is the author of The God Delusion. So, he does not believe in anything which is outside the realm of nature, scientifically speaking. So if you were to explain anything to him that is metaphysical, he won't believe that. So he's not going to believe anything from the Mi'raj. But we are claiming that the Isra is physical. We're claiming that that was a physical journey. If you want to explain it logically, the only thing that you would have to explain is how this horse came to be. But if you were to say that this horse followed the laws of physics, right now, a plane can travel anywhere around the world in a few hours. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if you were to say that you could reach the other side of the world in a mere few hours, they would laugh at you. It used to take months on a ship to reach somewhere like Australia. Months on a ship. Now it takes less than a day. This would have been unheard of just 200 years ago. Right now, the Earth is rotating 66,000 miles per hour. Okay? Around the sun. And it rotates on its own 1,000 miles per hour. So it's turning 1,000 miles and around the sun 66,000 miles at the same time, 24 hours a day. And you're on Earth and you're chilling. Now imagine when you get into the car and you just go only 100 miles per hour, 150 miles per hour, and you feel so uncomfortable, so fast. If I told you, like right now, as me and you are speaking, the Earth is rotating at this speed, thousands and thousands of miles per hour. Okay? 1,000 miles by 66,000 miles. If I told you that and you had no clue about the science of space, of the universe, of the Earth, then you would think that I was lying. You would think that I was posing something ridiculous. But we know this. This has been scientifically proven. Okay. Likewise, the Burak, we're not saying that it broke laws of physics in terms of the way in which it flew. It can fly the same way an airplane flies. Why not? If it followed the same rules. The issue is, how can a creature like that exist? That's what someone would have to ask. How can a creature like that exist? Because logically, then you'd say, well, I told you, okay, there's a creature that can fly, like a bird. The same way a bird can fly, a burak can fly. The same way a bird can fly, this creature can fly. So it's not against logic. It's not logically impossible. What's difficult for someone to believe is the fact that this creature exists. That's what it's difficult for you to believe. And just because you find it difficult for this creature to exist does not mean it cannot exist. Till now, we still are looking for creatures at the bottom of the sea that we don't know about. We don't know what exists at the bottom of the sea. And once we find it, because we saw it with experience, you see how Haqul Yaqeen, we find it, and then we say, oh, it exists. What we're saying is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his own special creatures. Here, yes, a biologist like Richard Dawkins is not going to ever believe you. Neither is any scientist that does not believe in Allah. But we are Muslims who believe at the end of the day in the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, which is absolute. If you believe in the Quran, then you believe that Isa brought the dead back to life. That's the Quran. Do you say that's a fantasy? What does Richard Dawkins think about that? He won't believe it.
Yeah,
in the Quran it says Moses split the sea. What does Richard Dawkins think about that? He probably says it's a story. It's a mythical story from the olden times. The ancients used to write these stories. We believe it's a real miracle. A stick turned into a snake for real. We believe that. And we're not saying that that goes against laws of physics either. It's just that it was fast forwarded. A stick can turn into dust and an animal can come and eat that. And so eventually, it can be a part of a snake. If atoms always travel from one entity to another entity, right? They say that atoms always are moving through energy, that at one point atoms that were in space are now on Earth, maybe even a part of you. If that's the case, then always cause and effect, but it's fast forwarded cause and effect. Fast forwarded, which Allah has the power to do. And that's why we say miracles is khariq lil'ada. We're saying a miracle is not normal. We agree, it's not normal. It's not supposed to be. That's why it's a miracle. And that's one of the ways in which a prophet shows that he's being truthful, by showing you his miracles, by showing you the powers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted him to prove to you. And the Quran, we say, is one of the greatest miracles that still, to this day, 1,000 years later, no one has been able to challenge or disprove. The Buraq is something that is not normal. It's a miracle. And that's why it's difficult for people to believe in it. But then if you look around you, you're living miracles every day. You just normalize them because you see them all the time. The fact that you're even here is a great miracle. Buraq, the host creature, in my opinion, is something very simple for Allah. Very easy. I don't see any issue with that whatsoever.
Sheikh, just to go back a bit, so the Buraq was to take the Prophet.
I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you. If you want, type it up. Thank you, Habibi.
Yeah, that's...
If Buraq wasn't visible, what was the reason for it? Why not kun fayakun and the Prophet would have been in Palestine? So Buraq was visible. The Buraq was in the Isra journey, not the Ma'raj. It took him on the Ma'raj after. But the Buraq is what allowed Rasulullah to travel from Mecca to modern day Palestine. Even I don't even know if the Buraq was on the Ma'raj either, actually, in that case. So when it comes to the Buraq, it was physical. And the reason why Allah did not basically just make the Prophet Muhammad disappear and reappear in Palestine is to show you as well that these miracles can be done. What if this is the reason that it comes down? To show you the reason, as well as to show you that everything happens in asbab. Everything happens through causes and effects. Everything happens through one level to the next, one stage to the next. So this is no different, even with a miracle like this. And at that time, literally, it would have taken the same amount of time an airplane would have taken. So if an airplane at that time was available and the Prophet took it and came back, you don't find an issue with that because it can technologically be explained. But because you can't technologically explain a Buraq, you can't believe it. And this actually shows an issue with the way in which a lot of us see the world through a scientific lens. Much of the world is not understood by science. Till now, even science cannot explain consciousness, memories, cannot explain that. And it's become a dogma. And so science is not the be-all, end-all. What would have been interesting is if we can get the body of the Buraq and scientifically experiment on it and understand what it is. Yes, that would have been very good if we had a spare Buraq that we can see and experiment on, because it's physical, so we can experiment on that. But because we don't have it here to experiment on it, does that mean it didn't exist? No, doesn't mean that. And as Muslims, it's in our scripture. And I'm not saying this as in like, just take it, it is what it is. Not at all. I'm saying that as a Muslim, at the end of the day, you worship something. You follow something. And this is something that's very interesting. I want to just point this out here. What are we actually saying when we say, Ya Allah, I don't want to follow your path or believe what you're saying until I'm convinced about it. I want to be convinced. When I'm convinced, I will stop eating pork. I will stop drinking wine. But I see that drinking wine, even a little bit of wine, is okay. I'm not harming anyone. So I don't see why this is haram. But if you explain to me why it's haram, then I will, inshallah, if I'm convinced, I will stop drinking wine. I say, Habibi, who said that you have to be convinced? Who said that you have to be the one to say, okay, I agree? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this is the case. Allah created you, imagine, you know how we say in our houses, my house, my rules? Imagine someone came to your house and said, yo, why do you put your slippers out here? And in the kitchen, why is it like that? You know, you should still sort out in a different way. When you convince me that the plates should be here and the spoon should be here, then I will agree with you. I'm like, Habibi, who are you? This is my house. Who are you to agree with my setup? It's my house. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is his universe. He created this, his story. He placed these things in this way. It's not for you to be convinced or not. Now, do not misunderstand, because I'm not saying that you should not be thinking. Bil'aks, never. We are people who think, but we, through evidence and through intellect and reason and logic, we come to the conclusion that Allah exists. We're not just people who are, believe in the God of the gaps and Allah exists and khalas. That's why we can't explain anything. No, we're saying, man, I am here. I am here. And I am an effect of something. I couldn't just pop out of anywhere. So I came from something. From all the different, proofs that we have. This is the Burhan that people use usually about Allah and the infinite chain of regress. So Allah exists. Allah exists we know this through knowledge. Through knowledge, we come to the proof that the Prophet Muhammad is a prophet, the Quran and everything else. Once we do that, once we are here, once we believe, then we follow Allah. It's fine to speculate. It's fine to discuss with each other. It's fine to think, why did Allah create Fajr 2 rak'ahs and Dhuhr 4 rak'ahs? We can speculate. We can say maybe it's because Allah wants to have mercy on you in the morning and doesn't want you to, He knows you're not going to be focused. Maybe, but we don't know that. What if someone comes and says, Allah, I think it's better if you do Fajr 4 rak'ahs and Dhuhr 2 rak'ahs, because Fajr, there's more time, so I can give you more time. During the day, I'm at work, so I can't really give you too much time. So if you make it 2 rak'ahs, it's much better. Look, Habibi, who said this is the reason? Allah didn't tell you the reason. Sometimes Allah does not tell you the reason, because are you worshipping your own intellect, as in your own mind being convinced? Are you following yourself? Are you following Allah? At the end, it means you're not an abd, you're not a slave. Abd. And this is why it's important, because here, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, subhanallah, He says, glory be to the one who took his servant, his abd, on a journey. Look how He describes Rasulullah as his abd. In this journey, the greatest journey, He said, this is my abd, servant. The greatest level you can reach is ubudiyyah, when you have complete tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're not people that say, oh, don't use your mind. No, so no one can come and say like, oh, you're just like ISIS. You're just saying believe and do whatever it is. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we use our minds, we use our intellect, we use evidence, we use everything, we use reason. But when it comes to miracles, and when it comes to certain laws, you have to take the role of the abd. Otherwise, what is your role? Where is your devotion? Where is your worship? What's the point? Are you here just to make sense of everything for yourself? Allah didn't want that. Allah doesn't want to make sense of everything for yourself. So here we say ubudiyyah. Ubudiyyah is the pinnacle of what the insan can reach. Complete ibadah. We want to be on the highest level of ubudiyyah. Meraj is what occurs on the highest level of ubudiyyah. Subhanallah asra bi'abdihi laylan. Bi'abdihi, with his servant. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the word He uses. He doesn't say birasulihi, not with his messenger, binabihi, his prophet. No, bi'abdihi, for a reason, to show you. So we need to take this role on as devotees and people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are we looking at this and saying, oh, this is just logical, this is a fantasy, this is, who said so? Who said so? Airplanes were a fantasy 200 years ago. Now they're here, because scientifically they can be proven they're not a fantasy anymore for these people. Who is your God? What you believe is based on who your God is. And many people, unfortunately, their selves are their gods. Their selves.
Okay. Thank you, Sheikh.
Here's another question. Does the Mi'raj exist in any other books of any other religions? Any proofs in today's world that any physical remains of the Buraq or any scripts of a similar species? No. So the final religion, the final world religion is Islam. So the final revelation is the Quran. So it wouldn't be in any other book, because chronologically the Quran was the last one. Now the Mi'raj journey is available in the Quran. So the Isra journey, the Mi'raj journey are available in the Quran. So every Muslim has to believe in this as the miracle of the Prophet, or they'd be saying the Quran is not telling the truth in this aspect. As for any physical remains of the Buraq, no, not that I ever know of or heard of. Any descriptions of a similar species? Angels, perhaps. Creatures from the other world. There are many creatures from the other world. Creatures that no one has ever heard of, seen, or tasted, or anything else. That we are going to be tasting foods we've never tasted, seeing creatures, hearing sounds we've never heard in the world to come. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings this to our understanding through our senses. But it's going to be a lot greater than the physical senses that we experience in this world, whatever is in the world to come. Here you're speaking about something from a different world that impacts our world.
Just a minute, Sheikh. There's a question and I'd like to forward it to you.
I couldn't hear that, my brother. Can you type it?
Sure.
Okay, here's one. Upon reading some riwayat, I came across one that stated that the 5 daily prayers were made obligatory on this night going forth. How authentic is this hadith? Does it have any backup? Following up, riwayat says that the Prophet was ordered to make 50 salah obligatory per day. The Prophet had a discussion with Prophet Musa, who he saw in the heavens. So, yes, I know the hadith you're speaking about. When it comes to much of the narrations in the life of the Prophet, and I think if you watch the lecture series that I had last year on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where I speak about this, I speak about conflicting narrations in the time of the Prophet. And you see that there are even conflicting narrations of his own birth, the date of his birth, let alone everything else, right? 12 Rabi' al-Awwal, 17 Rabi' al-Awwal. So here, it's no different with all the different ahkam that we see. Now, the salat is a hukum. This specific narration that you're speaking about, I don't know about the authenticity of it because I haven't seen its chain or anything like that, and I can check that out. But what I do know is there are several different narrations when it comes to salat and when salat began. And that the salat, as far as I have read, began before the Isra and Mi'raj. You see, you have to take into consideration that the date that it happened on was about, according to my history teacher, 5 years after the Ba'athah. So I have to ask, what was happening for those 5 years? Not only that, but the Prophet was praying for 2 to 3 years before the Ba'athah, according to some narrations, as Imam Ali alayhi salam explains and as Imam Sajjad explains. So I have to ask, what were they praying in those times? And I know that in those narrations, they were praying 2 rak'ahs before the salat that we know now, the 5 daily prayers. What we do know is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the 50 prayers obligatory on the Prophet himself. So the Prophet prayed every prayer. The Salat al-Layl was obligatory on the Prophet. He prayed every prayer. But for us, of course, that's not the way. But there is an ahkam, is the way ahkam change and evolve over time. So if they were praying the 2 rak'ah prayer beforehand, and then this is the case, and they started praying the 5 daily prayers, then we say that it's normal. It's not that Allah does not know. It's that slowly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives people the ahkam in times that is suitable for them. So it's even Shahr Ramadan in the beginning. Shahr Ramadan, you didn't have to fast 30 days in those days, right in the beginning. Fasting 30 days in a row. It wasn't wajib on the Muslims like it is for us right now. It became wajib later on into the Prophet's life as he spread the message. This happens slowly. Okay, it's called nasakh. The hukum slowly begins to evolve. It's not that Allah can't do it straight away. It slowly begins to wipe out this side and it begins to evolve. Now, whether this happened with salat could be the case. I don't know. It could be. But this narration itself could be a mystical way to explain it. It doesn't have to be a literal way to explain it. It could be a mystical way to explain it. There are many mystical ways of this explanation that we find in different ahadith. And this could be one. But in terms of it being the actual reason, we do not know. We don't know ilal al-shara'i' most of the time. Ilal means the causes of the sharia. This is a good question. Here, a brother asks, why does Allah say Salat is the Mi'raj of a mu'min? What's so special about Salat compared to the rest of Furu' al-Din? Salat is basically this journey of Mi'raj for every single human being. It's the ascension. It has the ability to allow you to ascend. Alama Tabatabai says his life changed after a sincere 2 rak'ah prayer. Just 2 rak'ahs. A 2 rak'ah prayer, sincere 2 rak'ah prayer, allowed him, he says, he felt an invisible hand took him and guided him from then on. So the prayer is timreen. It is the practice of the person on a journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the blueprint of the journey. So you know how you have, if you want to build a school, and you bring the architect, and he shows you a blueprint of the school. Here's the playground, here's the tennis court, here are the classrooms. Okay. Because most of us will never go on a journey like the Mi'raj, which some people, they go on the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not exactly the Mi'raj, but it's a journey. Like Mullah Sadra speaks about the 4 journeys. Okay? It's a very deep concept. I'm not going to go into that right now. And most of us never will go on those 4 journeys. We just don't have the spiritual stamina to do it. And Allah understands that. So He gives us a blueprint. Just like that school, He gives you a blueprint of the Mi'raj. And the blueprint of the Mi'raj is your salat. As you bow, as you go into sujood, and you go into fana, and you go into this forgetting of the self. Your self perishes, your ego perishes in the presence of Allah. The problem is that some people don't understand what salat actually is. They think it's just normal. You go and you say a few words and it's done. That's not what salat is. Salat's supposed to be a spiritual ascension towards God, and that's why you do it every single day for mastery purposes. You're supposed to master it. The same way a musician masters his piano and becomes a part of that piano, you have to become a part of that salat. And that salat raises you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your blueprint, as your Mi'raj. Eventually, if someone practices this enough, as they grow on their journey to Allah and they take this seriously, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless this person with a great experience that is suitable for their own lives. And you will no longer be praying the same prayer. And what a loss it is for someone to pray the same prayer at 40 as they did at 20. You just wasted 20 years. You've wasted 20 years of your life. You are given this life to know Allah, and prayer is the best way to know Allah. It's very, very disappointing for someone to pray the same prayer in their old age as they did in their youth. And if we are doing that, right now we really have to check ourselves and reanalyze our situation, reevaluate our situation. Mi'raj can act as a wake-up call for us, inshallah. Are there any other questions?
So I think the audience can hear me. If anyone has any questions, they should feel free to share them in the comment box, and I'd forward them to say it.
Okay, it's a good question about the day of Mab'ath. Just what happened on the day of Mab'ath. So I'll answer this and wrap up after this question, inshallah. On the day of the Ba'ath, it is said that the Prophet Muhammad was in the cave of Hira. And the mainstream narration that you see on BBC says that the Prophet started to panic when he heard the words read, Iqra, and he panicked. And he didn't know where it's coming from. And shaitan came to him and the angel came to him and he couldn't tell the difference between them. Until, astaghfirullah, he was even smacked by one of the angels and he wanted to jump off the cliff. This is the mainstream narration, it's a very ridiculous narration. He wanted to commit suicide because he was so scared about what was happening. And he came back down to his wife, Khadija, alayhi salam, who said, "You're a prophet." So he was like, "I'm a prophet, I didn't know this." So then she takes him to her cousin Waraqa and he says, "You're a prophet." And it seems like everyone knows he's a prophet except him, right? And obviously this is not a true narration. However, in the Shi'i outlook, we see that the Prophet always knew that he was destined for prophecy, and he was trained for this from a young age. And that when he was on the cave, when he was on the mountain in the cave of Hira, Jibreel came to him and told him, Anta Rasulullah, and now is the time that you begin your message. And the Prophet returned from the cave smiling and cheerful, because he had been waiting all this time, all these years. He had been waiting for this message to begin, and now finally it did. This is the story of the Ba'tha. Iqra is indeed the first ayah that descends, but it descends on Laylatul Qadr, Shahr Ramadan, alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. So it comes down in Shahr Ramadan, not on the 27th of Rajab. So that's what happened on this day. So inshallah, thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me. And I hope that I was able to answer some of your questions. And thank you for your hard work. Yes, I'm done, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheikh. On behalf of the KSIJ Dar es Salaam Jamaat and the Tabligh Board, I'd like to thank you, and we're looking forward to have another conversation, a better one next time, inshallah, with proper internet. Thank you very much,
Thank
Sheikh.
you, Habib. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.